some area districts. I think it's safe to say, especially in the districts that have multiple days where they have unrestricted use of personal days, that they probably average about 1.75 personal days per staff member. That's not the final, that is an approximation. But I think that 1.7 there is just so we could have something to look at. So again, if we opened it up and had 2 unrestricted personal days in the district, that would cost the district almost $70,000, which is about a $40,000 impact to what we currently have. I know there's been a couple of questions in that, yes, we do offer all of our staff 2 personal business/emergency days, but we don't budget for every staff member taking 2 in our current substitute allocation. And so, Kim, like any good business manager does, we take a look at the average use over years, and then that's what we plug in. And again, that's part of our regular sub budget. In over the last couple of years, we've had to add more money to that, meaning we've always spent more in substitutes than what we had originally budgeted.
Can I just clarify that the 29,000 is only the calculated cost for these personal days?
Yeah.
Sick days, FMLA, all the other days that we need a substitute for, our substitute budget is way higher than that, obviously.
Yeah.
But he's just isolating 2 personal days, which, Tony can run a report to say, because we classify the days as they're used, so they can say, okay, how many personal days were used by this type of employee, so that we know for sure is 165, and we're multiplying that by the $180. In that 10 sick days, so let's say a teacher uses 2 personal business days for one of the reasons that was approved, they still have 8 sick days to use. So if they get sick, then they can use those sick days. We also have to have a substitute, obviously, for those days. For teachers that are on FMLA, they'll often use their 8 sick days, their 2 personal days, maybe some of their sick bank, that 75 that rolls from year to year. So they could have 30 days, and that's our sub budget is that 30 times 180. So this only represents a very small portion of our total substitute costs.
And you mentioned something that I failed to mention. While we offer 2 personal business/emergency days, when a teacher uses it, it actually comes out of their 10 sick days that are in there. So it's 10 sick days. Included in that is the 2 personal business/emergency days. It's not 10 sick days plus 2 personal business/emergency days.
Okay, so that's included in the 10.
It would be included in the sick days, yeah.
So you can use them either as a sick day or a personal business day.
Okay. So what's the difference then for the personal business emergency days? Is it that those 2 days require pre-approval?
Yeah, and we're going to dig into that in the next couple of slides. Yeah, we'll talk about all the restrictions there, because there are, it is tightly restricted, tightly controlled.
Is the daily rate that teachers are charged in this presentation versus the substitute rate?
So if a teacher takes an unpaid day, that is based on their daily rate, which is different for every teacher. So it's all, a teacher that's making $50,000 is going to have a smaller daily rate cost than a teacher that's making $100,000.
So for the district, is it the same?
Oh yeah, we pay for, in terms of substitute, it's the same.
So potentially we could have teachers who are, I'll wait.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's actually dig into what is in the current handbook again, because all of this would be part of our handbook. Again, as a board, you have the ability to change the handbook at any time. So 1, we're not in a time crunch to get it done, but 2, if in September we decide we want to make a change, we can do that. We don't have to wait another year. As a board, you can make that and implement it. My only caution would be is if there's something that is going to negatively impact teachers. I'm not saying we're doing that, but if it was going to negatively impact teachers, that we would do that at the end of the year, so that teachers going into the new school year, they would know what they're getting into and what they're signing a contract for. So this is the description. If you go in the handbook, this is our current one, has not changed since I've been here. Don't know exactly when the district decided to create or use personal business/emergency days, but I'm sure it's been for quite a while. So this is what the description is. It says, educators may utilize up to 2 days each employment year for personal business or unavoidable emergencies that are outside the employee's control and cannot be scheduled outside of work time. Approved personal emergency days will be deducted from the employee's unused 6 days. Half-day increments may be allowed, but depending on the circumstances, full days may be required. So again, looking at that, in part of the restrictions is they either have to be half-day or full days, but there's no guarantee that it could just be a half-day. Some of that is predicated on how easy is it to get a sub. There's only so many subs out there. Some subs only want to work a full day. So that's where that would come into. Tony, have we ever enforced that? Like if a person asks for a half personal day, have we forced them to go to a full day? No. So again, not something that we've done, but it is something based on the language that's in our handbook we could do. Okay. Now, to go further into the restrictions, and I've got a couple of pages of this because there's a lot of them. Cedarburg educators are expected to take their employment contract and their commitment to their students extremely seriously by fulfilling all of their professional obligations, including maintaining the highest level of attendance. Employees must make every effort to avoid scheduling personal commitments that conflict with contracted work time. Personal business/emergency days are only for compelling circumstances which cannot reasonably be conducted outside of the workday and/or are out of the employee's control. Unavoidable emergencies, for example, basement flooded, flat tire, broken furnace, would be reasons for taking a personal/emergency day. I'm gonna pause there right there. In those examples, you're probably not having a lot of pre-planned time, right? It's something that just happens. Those are things where the teacher would call the principal, connect with Tony, hey, this has happened, and then that would go there. We'd give a personal business/emergency day for that. Close family member weddings, legal proceedings, graduations, and moving college-age students are reasons for taking a personal business/emergency days. Those are all things where we would want to have a lot more time knowing. So we'll take a look at that, but that's something that could be pre-planned. So again, what I'm trying to highlight here, there is restrictions, but there are times where a teacher would be granted a personal/business emergency day with little planning. An emergency happens, and then there are times where we would require that there is advanced planning. Going on, examples of unacceptable reasons to use personal business/emergency days include vacations, travel days/interruptions, attending sporting events/activities, and other similar events of the employee's choice. Personal business/emergency days should not be requested for PD/records days, or to extend holiday breaks, or to take vacations by extending a weekend. The administration reserves the right to require an explanation for any personal business/emergency day request. Personal business/emergency day requests for any day after May 31st must include a detailed explanation of the extenuating circumstances that do not allow the business to be conducted outside of contracted work time. Personal business/emergency days shall not be used to engage in activities for which the employee will receive compensation from any source. I'll pause on those first two restrictions.
Can you just go back to that first page really quickly for me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any question on either of these two?
I have one question. Do we have any feel and breakdown of the 0.75 per educator? How much is used for the emergency, like flat tire, versus kind of a scheduled in advance event?
I could look. I mean, oftentimes we don't, educator doesn't have to provide a very specific reason if it falls on a day that is not blocked out. There's a level of professional trust with the educator, the principal of the building, where there doesn't have to be a specific reason put in, and I would say most of the time that's done ahead of time. But if it's like pretty spur of the moment, it would probably be considered an emergency, and then we'd get a reason for that. But I don't have a perfect breakdown in front of me right now.
Real feel, I mean, cause I would think, the flat tire will, I would hope that's pretty rare. I mean, it can happen, obviously, but.
Yeah, I would say it's the smaller of the two.
I was just curious on one of them, there was like the travel delays.
Yep.
I'm just curious why that would be called out specifically That seems like something that's unavoidable, out of your control, sort of thing.
Okay, well,
Sure, I guess it depends on how you look at it. The school of thought has been that when you are booking a trip over winter break or spring break, you're choosing to do that, you're choosing your return flight. I would say most of the time you're trying to err on the side of caution and trying to come back on a Friday or a Saturday. Sometimes you get delayed, you plan to come back on a Sunday, your flight got delayed, now you're coming back Monday and you're asking to take a personal day Monday. So it's been those situations, where it hasn't been an accepted reason for a personal day.
So what's done in that instance then? So that if they can't make it that Monday, is that an unpaid day or?
That's what it has been.
Unpaid day, okay. Are there cases where personal days are requested and then if they're denied, the teacher or educator can take unpaid
Yeah.
days for that? Is there, okay,
Yeah, we average about 25 unpaid days per year.
25 per year, okay.
For all teachers?
Would you say most of those are after a request that was denied, or that sometimes teachers?
Oh, they would have to be, cause like,
Okay.
nobody can just put in
Say, I'm
unpaid
taking
leave.
this day off, I know it's not gonna be approved, but I wanna take it off.
Yeah,
A lot of it's for vacation that they know, so they know it doesn't follow the very strict guidelines, so they're like, hey, I have this once in a lifetime vacation. Great, and so I'd like to request this ahead of time, so they
wouldn't
know
say
that
it's a once in a lifetime
Well,
vacation, but
yeah,
whatever it is, it's
Right.
important to the staff member
Correct.
that they want to attend it and, because it doesn't meet the language, it would be unfair.
it's not like they apply and then they get denied, they talk to the principal ahead of time and say, I have this, doesn't fit, but can I still take the days off?
And does that go toward their sick pay or no?
no, that's an unpaid day.
And so they still keep their 10 days?
Yep, yep. Yeah, they just lose, whatever that day is. Do we, how often, and I don't know this answer, that's kind of what I'm asking, do we ever deny unpaid days? No. We, again, could, and that's the part, so sometimes, and I've had people ask, can we get more clarification on an unpaid day? And my answer to that is no. Because technically, the reason you're getting an unpaid day is because you're breaking your contract. And so, but as a district, we recognize things come up, and so we wanna honor that, but, a teacher's contracted for 190 days, so if they're not working in that 190 days, that is technically a breaking of the contract, so. We wouldn't put that in there, but there's a practice of, we recognize things come up, we recognize teachers don't have the ability to suddenly take a vacation day, because this is not something they have, so we do try to accommodate those, and as Tony said, we've never denied them. Don't have any intention to deny them as long as, we can get substitutes and take care of things, so.
Is it the view of this committee that the language that will be shown here and on the next slide would be open to change? Would that be the place of this committee to offer that feedback?
Yeah, yep, and then to the full board when we get to the, when it comes, when it comes to the handbook, the full board would have an opportunity. Yeah, that's why we're bringing the handbook here first, yeah.
So although I'm not a member of this committee, as a board member, I'm assuming this potentially eventually goes to the board table. When I'm looking at that first slide, again, I apologize, thank you for going back and forth. Just so people are aware, it's hard for me to have a lot of tech in front of me, so yes, I've read through this, but this is easier for me. When we're looking at these examples, basement flooded, flat tire, broken furnace, it assumes someone has a house, someone has a car. When you're looking at these close family member weddings, legal proceedings, graduations, moving college age students, these are all reasons for taking a personal day. Those are assuming people have all of those things, close family, some kind of legal proceeding, which I think is fair to think someone, anyone, whether they're single, older, married, etc., could have a legal proceeding. But I don't necessarily think it's reasonable to think that a largesse of our teaching population would be planning around necessarily graduations and moving college age students. So calling those out specifically as, yes, these make sense, these are fair, doesn't really align with, to me, what would be fair language. When we're then looking at that next slide, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One more time. The ones where it says, these are reasons that should not be, there was one, the extenuating circumstances part. If we don't have, do we have language that says, here's what extenuating circumstances are?
No, this is the only language we have.
Okay,
Yeah.
so for me, the word compelling is not clear enough. The word extenuating is not clear enough. The examples that are given are somewhat biased. And the one example that was shared, I believe, about board members of one staff member having something that seems to be a once in a lifetime thing was denied. So, to me, that's a bit strange.
Sure. So I'll share that the examples, and we've added those examples since I've been here, have really been predicated by the requests we get. And so that's where those specific examples came from, is from the request we have. And anytime we get a request, we kind of, yeah. So yeah, totally understand what you're saying, but I also wanted to give a little backdrop of those were just, you know, I think when I first came here, I don't even know what we had for examples.
They were all in there except, college movement day
Oh,
and
okay.
graduation.
Okay.
And those were two we
Yeah,
had.
so, yeah, certainly something that is up for discussion and, again, clarification if needed.
So basically, you're just kind of like parading out like the requests that you've gotten, right? You're
Mhm,
saying,
yeah.
You're just putting it in buckets, like, these are the ones that in the past have been denied, and these are the ones that have been approved.
Yep, so again, kind of going back to the very first description there where it says, are for personal business. So what would be considered a personal business, and, you know, that's the legal proceedings, that's, you know, if you're buying a house, kind of thing, or unavoidable emergencies that are outside of the employee's control and cannot be scheduled outside of work time. So when there's other things that come up, that's kind of what Tony and the administration kind of looks to, yeah. And providing more examples is always helpful when we get to it. Okay. Again, in addition, personal business / emergency days shall not be used to attend union meetings or legislative rallies, to engage in job actions such as picketing or demonstrating, or to participate in activities designed to embarrass or discredit the district. Personal business / emergency days requested for non-emergencies or for matters that could be addressed outside of contract work time may impact performance-based compensation decisions, particularly when such requests are for restricted days. Questions on that? Okay, and we can come back to any of these if someone does. So request and approval, so this is a process of how this gets done. Personal business / emergency day requests using the district's absence reporting system shall be made as far in advance as possible, normally not less than 5 days and preferably many weeks. It is understood emergencies may delay the formal submittal of the absence request. The supervising administrator has the right to approve or disapprove all requests in consultation with the Director of Human Resources. The administration reserves the right to limit the approval of personal business / emergency days based on substitute availability or other circumstances. So again, the big piece here is, you know, if you're gonna put in one that's a non-emergency, we're looking for that to be at least 5 days, if not sooner, and that really is centered around, it just gives us a better opportunity to secure a substitute. But then we also have the recognition that sometimes there are emergencies, sometimes things happen, and so you can't meet that 5-day window, and we're not gonna necessarily hold that against a person if it fits in that emergency category. Any questions there?
So do we currently have any limitations on how many employees can be granted leave at one time?
Not formal limitations, I mean, certainly if we knew, you know, if you looked and you saw you already had 9 substitutes requested, we may. Again, that's not something that we had to do, but that would be an example of what we might do, or could do. All right, unpaid absences that are not part of an approved extended leave. So unpaid days without further disciplinary action may be allowed at the discretion of the Human Resources Director in consultation with the employee supervisor. Unpaid days are intended to allow for time off to attend personal events, but not for vacations. Employees must present the initial request for unpaid days to their supervisor, supervising administrator, as far in advance of the anticipated absence as possible. Unpaid days are not to be entered into Skyward without approval from the supervising administrator and the director of human resources. Unpaid days may include the compensation for medical and dental benefits associated with the position. I'm gonna go on because we've got another part of this. It also says, in addition,
Can you go back one?
sure.
When that last line, unpaid days may include the compensation for medical and dental benefits associated with the position. One of my questions was, when we were paying the subs $180 per day, and there's different daily rates for whoever the person is. The difference between that $180 and whatever that daily rate is that dental benefits and medical? Is that what's being built into that, or is that something different?
No, that's something different.
Okay, thank you. Keep going.
Let's see, in addition to the compensation deduction, if an employee is granted an unpaid day for personal reasons, excluding extended medical leaves or child rearing leaves under FMLA, the employee may be responsible for all associated costs to the district to obtain a substitute, whether a substitute is required or not. Unpaid days taken outside of an approved FMLA leave will not be viewed favorably when considering performance-based compensation. I think the big one there is what that says is the district could charge the teacher for the substitute. I don't know that we've ever done that, but that is language that's in there.
So what was the board looking at when an educator sent along the daily rate that would come out of their salary?
Their per day rate, so let's say you have 100 days in your teaching contract, and you get $100,000, $1,000 is their daily rate. So
Sure.
every teacher has a different daily rate.
I understand that. So, would you mind just breaking down, if we're paying $180 for a substitute, and a teacher's daily rate is $1,000, and that if they're not there for 2 days, or what is it, 500 times, whatever, $1,000, let's just say it's that. But the sub is covering 2 days, and that's for less than $400. What's the rest of that money from the teachers? Why are they being charged so much money for covering those 2 days?
Yeah, so that's something the board could look at. I mean, that's the way it's done, but that's certainly something that an option the board could have, that the board could not, the board could decide that, hey, we're gonna keep the language exactly as is, we like the way that, we like the restrictions, we like that process, but maybe, you would change something and say, okay, we wouldn't deduct the daily rate, we would just charge the teacher the substitute rate and leave that there. And there would be validity for that, in that, if a teacher is gone, they're still expected to have lesson plans. They're still expected to do some of the work. So again, a teacher not being there doesn't mean that they haven't done work for that day. Yep. And that, again, that is an expectation that they would do that. And if there's emergency medical, something like that, we understand that sometimes teachers can't do that. But if it's something pre-planned, we would expect them to have that. So that's a phenomenal point, just in general.
I just ask the committee members, because my intent's not to steamroll this, but I'm very cognizant of my own bandwidth with these lights. And so,
Sure.
but can I just ask, is the way that I'm phrasing things making sense? I know in my head it makes sense, but so far Jaredon seems to be picking it up, what I mean.
I was thinking the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
So just to go back to your original point though, what Jaredon had said earlier about the total, the $1,000 being deducted in the difference, the teacher isn't fulfilling their contract.
I
And so
understand that.
that's the piece of that's the reason for the $1,000, is that right now, as it's written, the contract and the employee handbook have to be abided by, so in payroll, we're abiding by that by deducting $1,000 because they're not fulfilling their 190 days.
And that's with the assumption of whatever, based on the one instance we've been presented, maybe there were others, I have no idea. Based on the one instance that's been presented to the board, a request was denied, therefore, here's what you take instead. This thing that this falls under with the wording we have now means that you are breaking your contract, therefore, because of the wording we have now, this is the daily rate, this is what we're charging you. So if there's any kind of use at this committee level, or board member sitting at this committee level, who kind of look at that and are like, I think we can do better.
Yeah.
It's within the scope of this committee to do that.
Yep.
That's my understanding.
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay. So again, my intent for today really was to, like, let's see what the language is. Again, as I've talked to different people, I don't know that everybody fully understood, not because you didn't have the ability, just, you know, there's a lot of
It's a
stuff in
lot.
there. There's a lot, right? And so I just wanted to make sure that we really understood what was in there, really understood how we're using it, really understood what the impact is on teachers. And again, that's the piece, I don't wanna belabor it, but when we look at the daily rate, that really does impact teachers differently. And it does significantly impact our more veteran teachers, who generally have, you know, are making more money than our newer teachers, even though, you know, technically they're both missing a day. The substitute still costs the same, you know, the substitute value is the same there. So, so the next part of this is, you know, it says questions, clarifications, and next steps. And so when I'm thinking of next steps, it is, you know, are there some ideas, and I know there's many ideas out there of what we could, are there some specific where you're like, hey, Jared, team, I'd really like us to look into this, like, you know, and then what we would do is we'd go back and we'd dig in. We'd take a look at all the aspects of how that may impact the district, both from, you know, finding substitutes, substitute rates, figuring out what's the fiscal impact, figuring out what's the fiscal impact, not only to the district, but to the teacher too. Want to be able to spend some time really doing that. So, you know, any proposal that would come up, we'd have all the information there. As I said before, one of the things I would want to do too, I don't know if before the next PNF meeting is that, but if we are gonna make any changes to this, I would, and I know it's coming in the summer, but I would like to you know, notify, do a little survey with our teaching staff, just to get some of their ideas in this too. And again, part of that is it is compensation. And I think it's important to understand, you know, how the people who are being impacted by that would feel. So, are there any thoughts?
So
Yeah.
I have a number of thoughts, so I
Okay.
have to thank everyone who actually sent me information, and, I was starting to compile it, and then I realized there actually was a spreadsheet in there, so I did my best to like compile it in one.
Sure.
But what really jumped out to me is that we have it labeled as personal business emergency days, but really, they're business emergency days, they're not personal. And when I looked at the other districts around us, there's a pretty wide range, but Cedarburg seemed to be one of the most restrictive. And I guess I would be open to taking a look at, do we wanna give our staff, like, things that would truly be personal, and I know it would open it up to maybe those personal days being used a lot more, but I guess I see the viewpoint that there are some things that come up that are not just emergencies or legal proceedings, that there might be something within those contracted days that really could be valuable to an employee, and it would be one way to, I think, recognize the staff that we have. So I guess a couple of examples jumped out to me, as ones I would like to consider and discuss a little bit more. There were some districts that allowed, did we have wording for Friday and Monday not being allowed?
No.
Only if they're attached to like 3-day
One longer
weekends or
weekend.
spring break or.
About the only thing that's, in terms of the date, time, is the after May 15th.
Okay.
I mean, May 31st, sorry, yeah.
And I thought there was something about PD days, not
Right.
Correct, yeah, yep.
Right now, we have PD days generally on Fridays, right?
And that was pretty consistent that other districts did not allow that, and not before September 15th, not after May 15th.
Can you clarify the practice, it's that they don't have the ability to put in for a personal day? They would, you would talk to the principal, the administrator, they would talk to me, and if the reason has to, they have a language.
So like, especially for like, taking your student college, those most often happen during our, you know, beginning PD days at the start of the school year. So again, it's not that people don't ever do it on a PD work day, but there's gotta be a real good.
There was some wording in other districts where they allowed the personal days to be used up to 2 in a row, but then that same employee could do that more than once every 3 years. So something comes up in your life that you really wanna get to, you can do that, but you just can't do that every year consistently. That was something that made sense to me. And other ones were, being able to, from an administration point of view, look at how those people were off on a given day and make that decision, so being able to have some control there that you can't, clearly can't have several staff members out on the same day, but having that be part of the conversation of what's gonna be approved or not.
That would only come into play if the restrictions were loosened. It's never been an issue for us because our language is tighter, so we've never had an issue where there's so many people out on a particular day. Now, sick wise, certainly, in the winter time, but from a personal day perspective, it's not something we've had to deal with. So I think the districts that have those caps in there and need them, is because staff have the ability to take them more. I think the challenge that puts them in is you're really having to now, deny, are you holding firm on the language to deny people when you get those compelling reasons, but you say no because they're the sixth person, so like you start to get in that, that cycle a little bit.
But then they would still have the ability to take something unpaid if they had to be gone somewhere.
Potentially, although if we're, I would say in that case, no, because if we're denying their ability, if we've opened it up and, to be the personal day and we're denying it because we can't get subs, we're gonna deny the unpaid day too, because the issue then isn't the reason, the issue is we don't have people to put in front of our kids. And so, again, that would just be a scenario in that one where, if we've hit the max, we're using max, we hit the max and we're denying it based on that, then we would deny the unpaid day too.
Cause, the way our teachers on call contract works is, they look at what they're used to filling for us every day, right? So, let's say they're used to filling 10 subs for us, that's what they say, and we're gonna commit to that, right? So then we have a fill rate but if then all of a sudden we have days where we have to have 15 subs, and now we have 5 classes that don't have teachers, now we're pulling in principals and things like that. So that's why a max exists, because when we're pre-planning for, contracting with teachers on call and we're saying to them, this is what we expect our sub load to be, we're expecting them to honor their commitment to fill it.
So the teachers on call, that's like a fixed amount that we pay each year?
It's a daily rate that we pay per sub. So we only pay if we get a sub, but, obviously the more subs we need, the less chance we have to get them.
So like on their end, they try to make sure they have enough subs to meet what the needs are.
Yeah.
So they're planning on making sure we have, like you said,
Mhm.
10 subs.
10 subs,
Yep.
right. Because they provide subs for us, for Grafton, for almost every
Right.
district in the area.
Yeah.
I really appreciate this conversation too, and, just that it's brought up, there's just a lot here, and I think it's important we really do think long and hard, cause it really means a lot of changes, and I just have a list of things that have popped in my head. It doesn't mean I'm for one way or another, I just think it's fair for when we're having this discussion to think about, and I can, my writing is very inelegant, but I can type it.
Sure.
I mean, obviously, the number one thing is academic, educating our kids, and I know when we compare to other districts, that's good to a point, but this is our district, and we have to always do what's best for our district in educating our kids, and our teachers are great. I hope they know how great we are, and they're missed big time when they're out of the classroom, but yes, they do have personal lives, so I get that. The budget impacts, especially when you're talking like 40,000 possibly, I mean, that's gonna come out of salary. I mean, the budget is so tight next year, we're hoping, I don't even know where we're gonna come for salary, and so it is a benefit, and it may come at the cost of a salary increase, and is that what the majority of our educators want? Do they wanna give up a salary increase, potentially, to get more looser restrictions on their personal days? It's just a discussion to have. I do this, I highlighted this compelling definition, cause I struggled with that too, I'm like, what's a synonym of compelling? And I always Google everything, now it's AI, and it came up, it says, well, that's dependent on the use, which is, to me, was kind of comical, cause I think it is a really hard word in there, compelling. There's many ways we could do it, you know, I mean, I think tied to years of service, when you have an educator who's been there a long time, are they more prepared, you know, do we recognize that and give them a little more time than we would for 1 or 2 years teacher? I feel like possibly an educator who's established and been there is even more prepared to leave his or her class with the materials needed for that sub versus, you know, a first year, second, third year teacher who's really just getting to know their class, getting to know what teaching is, and it may be harder to have a sub come in that environment. Again, I'm just throwing things out. I don't have you know, I'm not saying I feel, these are just things to think about. I really think how long in advance a request is required. I look at a lot of these, like, to me, even 5 days, when there isn't a request out there that's 6 months, you know, 4 months, 6 months, I find that might meet that compelling definition a little better, because it might be something that really is a compelling, this is a really special event, I know this far and ahead, it's really important to me. Again, I just find that, you know, when you come up 3 days before, oh, I'm using this personal day, I think that's a struggle for everyone all around, and is it really a need to have a day off? Let's see. Again, do we set it to every couple of years like some of the districts did do? I mean, if you have an educator who's coming and, you know, maximizing their 2 days right away every year, you know, maybe we look at that, of whether we, you know, say, okay, you used it this year, you had your compelling, reason, now you have to wait. Again, you know, I was just thinking there's so many professions out there, it is hard, you have healthcare workers, emergency services, there are many other professions that have schedules that are determined by their profession a little differently than the average, workplace profession. And the hard thing too, I think about the educator profession, you know, in my work scenario, when a person takes off, it's really easy, you know, their work just kind of gets divvied out to everyone else, and that educator is gone. I'm sorry, that sub is never meeting the educator, so it's just a little different there. What else did I have? Oh, subs. So, and that's another thing which actually came up, and bear with me guys, because I have a question on subs. I was going through this for, we were talking about WASB, and they had an article in here about substitute teachers, and it's just something to think about. And that would tie into limiting the number of requests we have coming in at, you know, capping it per building, and that's where it would come in if the educator asks 4 or 5 months ahead of time, because this was, talking about, this is, you know, about licensure and placement of substitute teachers. And it's saying, on or before a substitute teacher's first day in the classroom, the district should provide a basic orientation to the district, including policies and procedures, maps of the district buildings and classrooms, and contact information for school staff. The district should also provide lesson plans and other needed materials such as student schedules. Even though the districts might not have much lead time when bringing in a new substitute teacher, basic employment orientation is also recommended. Prior to the substitute's first assignment, districts should review with the substitute, or at least provide in writing, the same general employment information the district would provide to any other new employee, such as the employment handbook, the student handbook, information about mandatory reporting of child abuse and neglect, and emergency procedures for things like lockdowns, severe weather protocols, and fire evacuation. And I just thought, that's really a lot for a sub. I mean, you think this sub is coming in, and it's, you know, we have a lot of training with our educators to prepare them for emergency situations and stuff, and It's just something, how many subs are we gonna have in the building at one time? Again, just something to think about. I've talked long enough, I can kind of type this up and hand it, but there's just a lot to really think about before we just go and, open up this policy. I'm not saying I'm opposed to changing something, but I think we have to really be, you know, and also I guess rely on administration too, because we wanna be careful of that boundary of being the board, that line and administration's line of administrating the overall, goals of the district, so, okay, thank you.
Paul, do you have anything as a committee member before I share thoughts?
I just had some questions too. So, like, how do we budget for the sick days? Are we assuming that every, teacher's gonna take out 10, or like, like financially, how do we put that into the budget?
We look at the trend of the previous year and the contracted rate, so, set that aside, and also look at how many babies are gonna be born next year.
Oh,
So we know that at plenty of months in advance, maybe like 6 months in advance, we know the babies, and so if there's lots of
That would
babies
be
one
really
day, like you'll see that on the line item this year, we have lots of babies in a specific area this fall coming, so we'll bump up the sub-budget for that over one time. We are, we have a lot of young females, on our staff, and so we have to pay attention to that. But normally it's just, it's pretty consistent year to year. So if we were to change a practice, then we would have to do kind of what Tony's doing and say, okay, analyze and say, what do we use and how do we expect that to change and what budget impact will that be? And then we recalibrate the next year after we kind of saw how it went.
okay, and what are you seeing on average for sick days? Do you have a?
I don't have that.
Per staff member or just used yearly?
Per staff member, the average.
We don't have that.
We can look that up.
Yeah.
Alright, and then, the 0.75, that's like what we actually are experiencing as far as, personal day, the 2 personal days being used? Okay. And the 1.75, that was just kind of like a guesstimate, or was that based on other districts?
Yeah, so it was, it was a quick estimate based on other districts, so we have other districts, I mean, I didn't go through the process of, okay, they have 365 teachers and, then do the proration there, but I did look, there's some that are, everybody is over 1, but there are some that were in the high 1.9s, I think there's probably even one that was in the 2s, so that was just, okay, just an idea, a spitball idea.
Just for like budgeting purposes, then, okay?
Yeah, just to give us a number to think about what would the potential impact be. The other thing too is if we make a change as we go through, we always have the ability to, okay, here's where we would like to get, but because we've not done it before, you could go in steps, like, okay, maybe instead of jumping the full change, in the first year, we can put in, okay, let's do a partial change and just see what is the true impact.
Right.
Especially if it's a fiscal one, and then, make alterations as time goes on too.
Okay.
So again, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing, like I said, the board has the ability to make changes at any time.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Okay.
I talked a lot more. Did you have anything? I do have a handful.
Yes, I did, do you wanna go?
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I had just some kind of clarifying questions, and I do appreciate the emails I got from the teachers in addition to this detailed information here. I think it's good that we're all kind of on the level playing field with, what the current process is. When these, personal days are requested, Tony, it sounded like you weren't always sure, like, what the specific reason was. Like, do you always know the reason for the personal day, or is it just approved by the principal and then?
If it's
That's-
on a
that's
day
it.
that is not blacked out, they do
Okay.
not have to enter a specific reason. I don't ask for a specific reason. When their days are blacked out, they don't have the ability to put the days in. That's when they go to their administrator and kind of start that process of what is the reason on the blacked out days.
What do you mean blacked out?
Yeah, that's okay.
Like taking a Friday off before winter break or the PD days. Those days that we identify at the start of the year based on the calendar, staff don't have the ability to put in a personal day on those days, so the term we use is blacked out.
Okay,
Doesn't mean they can't use it, and like I stated earlier, oftentimes if the reason fits the criteria, we would allow it, it's just so that we need a reason on those days, cause they're important to the district.
So then that would come to you, but if it's not a blacked out day, then it's up to the principal to approve.
Well, I mean, if it's one of the days that we know, like, there's pretty standard days, like, so if it's one that, okay, they're gonna go to college visit, yes, well, that would come to you too. But, you know, if there's some pretty standard ones, they're gonna go to a wedding, all right, a close family, wedding, then the building principal can just sign off on it. But if it's not one of those and they're tight ones, then they would have to tell.
But do they have to give a reason or not? I
Yes.
was under the assumption.
They truly don't. They don't have to spell out what it is every single time. And there are days that oftentimes it's worked out at the building level. And I don't have to get involved. You know, there's a level of trust.
But
there's a
they're
level
giving a
of
reason to the
communication.
principal.
For sure, yeah.
They're giving a reason.
It doesn't
to the
reach,
principal.
it doesn't
Yeah,
reach.
a reason is always given.
Yeah, sorry.
It doesn't have to go to Tony. You know,
Okay.
again, it can go to the principal if it's one of those standard ones that we always approve. Principal just approves it, yeah, member reaches Tony. But the ones where like, oh, this is outside of what we would normally do, or if it's a blacked out date, that's where it goes to Tony.
Okay, so, I mean, just one area I was wondering about, just kind of thinking about different options, like, could the categories or reasons why a teacher could take a personal day be looked at, like, for example, like, you know, that sporting, what does it say here? Attending sporting events and activities, well, that can really, you know, there's a difference between, you know, I want off for my, you know, 8U soccer player club, you know, child to be in, you know, a tournament in Madison versus, you know, my high school seniors playing in a, you know, a state, you know, there's a difference
Totally.
between
Yep.
a sporting event, they're not all the same level of kind of importance. So, I don't know, it'd be interesting to look at if you knew why some personal days were denied and they're kind of more common, could the reasons for taking a personal day be looked at as an area to give some additional flexibility, to? And then I just have two quick questions. So this is coming up now, I know as a board member, I don't recall getting a lot of emails or hearing a lot about personal days in the past. There weren't changes made in the handbook, correct? There weren't changes made to this, it's just come up as a topic as we're discussing it, but the handbook revisions have not contained a more restrictive reason for personal days.
No, we've not, it is not. This topic comes up every year, you know, and I, you know, I think I usually bring it up in my evaluation for a little brief period, but we've not had robust discussion on it.
Okay, and then my final question, I am logged into Board Docs and I don't see this PowerPoint in Board Docs.
It is not in board docs yet.
Okay, did you see it? I thought you said you read it.
No.
That's not what I read.
That's, okay, alright, if it could be, it would be good to be added.
Yep.
Clarification, I read the attachments that were sent by educators that had
Oh, okay,
a lot of information.
that's all, thank you.
Yeah.
So, private PSL fund, I'm just gonna state really explicitly, I'm gonna start backwards a little bit, because one thing Laura said that I think is really important is one of the last things you said, probably not one of your last points, because you mentioned you had many, but when we're talking about relying on administration and what that looks like as we're thinking through things, I wanna make it clear to everyone that thinking for me is talking out loud. It's not internal, it's discussion. Everybody processes things differently. So as we're talking, that's how I think through things. And when I'm relying on the administration, that's my asking Jared in at the start of this, hey, is this the space of this committee to work on this language? So the answer being yes, that's the space of this committee, is my answer of, hey, when we're relying on administration, we're relying on them to be honest and direct and saying, yes, you have authority as committee members to work on this language. So to me, it's not really a question of can we or can't we, or anything like that. It's yes, you can, and we can think about it, but, you know, everybody processes things differently. So, yeah, this is a robust conversation, and we're on item A of L, and you know, all of us are cognizant of that. But I don't remember it being any kind of, you know, full-on conversation before. And I think at some point, something has happened where, hey, it needs to be, and that's just now. I've never gotten 7 emails, I think I counted correctly anyway, about this with a lot of different perspectives. And with that said, I kind of took notes of what Kate, you viewed as, important, what Laura viewed as important, the questions that Paul had, that Elizabeth had, and I think there's a ton of overlap. I also agree our language, personal business / emergency days should be separated. I think that would be very helpful. I also liked the every couple year idea. I thought that was really intriguing. Laura, for the compelling, I 100% did a dictionary search and looked at when is this used in statute versus administrative guidelines, because I don't like that word for this. The how long in advance, to me, that also would, if we're gonna use the word compelling, yeah, I think it would fit that definition, so there's overlap there. I do think the substitutes and capping per building would be helpful to look at from the finance side of things and what that looks like. And yes, being really direct with educators of, hey, this is what a potential impact could be if we change this language. And that survey that you're talking about, because the next PNF meeting's not till September. So unless there's a special meeting called, which this may warrant that, that's certainly up to, you guys. But having that question out there just very transparently, I think would be worth doing, because we do have a wide variety of salaries, daily rates, reasons people take off. And the questions you asked, Paul, I hope I touched on that with the budget piece just then. And Elizabeth, for the sporting thing, 100% agree. There's all kinds of different reasons, and I'm not a sports parent, but I think there's absolutely things that people train years for. One of my best friends is, excuse me, I shouldn't say that, I shouldn't assume someone's my best friend. One of my friends is very involved with the Chicago Marathon, and there's a ton of work that goes into that for those athletes. So those very much can be once in a lifetime things. So for me, that would fit a definition potentially. If we would keep that word compelling or compelling, I would recommend looking at other words. So that's me thinking, is my speaking. I don't intend to go back home and think a whole lot more about this. This is me saying to you guys, these are my preferences.
So I think at this point it would be helpful, what I'd like to do is formulate a couple questions to give back to you guys to maybe move forward with this. So,
Sure.
I would like to know from staff, would they prefer true personal days if that meant maybe salaries could be increased? Like, if there would be a fiscal impact, what would be more important? I guess I also had written down, if we broaden definitions, what is the impact of that gonna be? I think we need to hone that a little bit, but that's just
What is the what of that gonna be?
like, if we broaden definitions for what is allowed as a personal day,
Yeah, do you have any thoughts?
I guess I am of the camp that, I think I'd like to see staff get a true personal day. Like, when I'm looking at what other area districts offer, most of them have a true personal day in some form, and there's some restrictions on them, but it's not just business or emergency. It's, you might have a reason you really wanna take a day and.
So you're saying a day where you don't need to give a reason, in other words, this is personal.
Doesn't have to meet that definition, a tight definition of what qualifies, basically.
I found it a little confusing, cause like Macklin, administration will approve, disapprove our requests, and a lot of them had, it's up to administration, so I guess I couldn't totally gather from reading this whether they were totally unlimited, or if they still had, there's a definition.
It really was not apples to apples. It really was, every district had a little bit different information.
Yeah, a lot of it instead of first come, first served, so it kind of address that whole issue of like, you know, if there's 6 people on one day, like, you know, the 7th person, you know, gets denied or something like that, so.
What will happen is they open it like on a specific day at a specific time, and then they look at the time clock, the time stamp of when people
Submitted.
submitted it. So teachers will it's like getting a summer school class. You literally refresh your browser and submit it.
If you know it's gonna be something that a lot of people will be asking.
And that's where I think it's we're throwing, you know, this is, I think it's all new to us as a board, and we're really trying to learn more about it, and we throw this stuff out, but then we're gonna continue to come back and say, well, think about this,
Yep.
Are there other specific questions you would like to send back to administration?
I'll come, whatever I think, I'll send back, so.
I think we've done that in the curriculum.
Questions.
Right.
Okay, yeah, so we'll look to, prepare, some different, you know, options based on this, you know, we've been thinking about a lot, but we do actually have a couple other, potential options, proposals, and we can crank out the numbers on that. We'll take a look at, some of the thoughts that you brought up, specifically, you know, broadening the language, you know, heard the athletic one, you know, so we'll have some options available. And, again, I think based on what we're doing here, you know, this took a fair amount of time. I would expect the next time we talk about it, take a fair amount of time too. So if it's one where, hey, do we wanna put another, P&F meeting on the agenda this summer that would just be talking about this, you know, I think that wouldn't make sense. We don't necessarily have to figure out that date met today, but if that's, you know, at the end of the meeting, if we have consensus that, oh, that's something we would like, I could have Brenda reach out to the committee members and see if there's another date this summer that we could get together and take a look at some actual proposals.
I think it'd be helpful if we do make changes that we make them as soon as possible, so that
Sure.
it could be
Yep,
not
okay,
pushed to December, but
good, yep, so I'll have Brenda reach out tomorrow.
so teachers know when they come back.
Jordan, I think you jotted this down earlier, but just that one piece of, Jared and Orkin, the sub rate versus the daily rate.
Yep, I have that down, yep. That actually is one of the proposals that we have already put together, yep.
Anything else from anybody on this topic? Okay. So the next item is the